equal to the border CSS property and set this to 0. So I'm going to save, reload, and this no longer has that border. So yeah, everybody, those are iframes. They're used to embed content from another source into an HTML document. They're useful for advertisements, and they're easily abused with a lot of hacking techniques. So yeah, those are iframes. If you learned something new, be sure to smash that like button, drop a random comment down below, and subscribe if you'd like to become a fellow bro. What's going on, everybody? It's your bro, hope you're doing well, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can create a button using HTML, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hey, in this video I'm going to show you how we can create buttons using HTML. We'll need a pair of button tags. There's an opening button tag and a closing button tag. Here's our button. To add some text between the button tags, we can add whatever text we want to the button, like click me. You can set this up as a hyperlink when you click on the button. To do so, just surround your button element with a pair of A tags. There's an opening A tag and a closing A tag. And I will set the href attribute of the opening button tag to a URL or relative file path of my choosing. To make this simple, let's set the URL to google.com. And then when I click on this button, it takes me to Google. You can disable a button by adding a disabled Boolean attribute to the opening button tag, and we can no longer click on this button. If you know a little bit of CSS, you can add some CSS properties directly to a button by setting the style attribute equal to and list some CSS properties of your choosing. Let's change the background color. You can pick a color name. You can use RGB values, or you can use hexadecimal values. I think I'll set this to a dark gray color, so maybe 6 3s. For RGB values and hexadecimal values, you can always use a color picker online. So if you would like to add multiple CSS properties, separate each CSS property with a semicolon. And next I will change the color, that's the font color. And maybe I'll pick green. One color I like is 00FF00. That's just a bright green color. You can also round these borders too by using the border radius property. So again, separate each CSS property with a semicolon, and I will set the border radius property to 5 pixels, just around the corners. Okay, cool. That's a pretty fancy looking button if I do say so myself, and yep, it still takes us to Google. Just by us using HTML, this adds structure to a web page, but it doesn't necessarily add functionality. That's where a language like JavaScript comes in. When we click on a button, we can have this button execute some function from a JavaScript file. I'll show you how we can create a very simple JavaScript program, but of course we'll cover this more in the JavaScript series. So let's get rid of this hyperlink and have our button do something else. There is an onClick attribute that we can set to a JavaScript function. So we just place the name of the function between a set of double quotes. We haven't created a JavaScript function yet, but let's say that we'll have a JavaScript function named doSomething, and then follow that name with a set of parentheses. And let's create a paragraph element. And we will say hello, and then close it. With this paragraph element, I'm going to set the ID attribute equal to, let's say, test. Here's how we can code a very simple JavaScript program. You're going to create a pair of script tags. There's an opening script tag and a closing script tag. And within the script, I will say function doSomething, parentheses, curly braces. So this function will perform some subsection of code. So when we click on our button, what do we want this program to do? We will take document.getElement by ID, parentheses, list the ID of our paragraph element, test.innerHTML, and I will set this equal to goodbye, then add a semicolon at the end. Okay, so when we click on this button, it's going to execute this function doSomething, and then perform whatever code is between this set of curly braces. So you may need to save refresh your web page, and if done correctly, when you click on this button, it will change this text from hello to goodbye. So that is a very small JavaScript program. So there is an onClick attribute that you can set equal to a JavaScript function. But of course, we'll cover more about JavaScript, well, in the JavaScript playlist. But that's one way in which you can add functionality to a button. In this video, we were more focused on actually creating the button itself. So yeah, if this video helped you out, you can help me out by smashing that like button, leave a random comment down below, and subscribe if you'd like to become a fellow bro. Hey everyone, I'm going to try and explain everything I can about forms in about 8 minutes. To create a form element, we'll need a pair of form tags. There's an opening form tag and a closing form tag. And depending on the user input that you need, there is an input element. And you can set the type attribute to whatever you need. Let's say we need some text from a user like a first name. Within our form, there is a text box where we can enter in some user information. So we should probably let the user know what we want them to type in. I will precede this input element with a label. Let's say first name, and a user can type in their first name. Now it is considered good practice to fill out a for attribute within the label, and set this to whatever you want. Let's say fname. And within the associated input element, I will set the ID also equal to fname, whatever's within the for attribute. This does a couple things. One, if I was to click on this label, this will select my input box. It's also helpful for people that are using screen readers so that they can easily navigate your form. There is also a name attribute. When we submit this data, what sort of name do we want to give that data? Think of it like a variable. I will also name this fname as well. Within the input element, there is a placeholder to display some default text to a user by setting the placeholder attribute equal to some text, like SpongeBob. So if I was to click within this input field and type something, that will get rid of my placeholder. Let's create an input field for a last name, and really we can just copy this and make a few changes to it. So copy both the label and the input element. Let's change this from first name to last name. Change for as well to lname, ID will be lname, and let's make name lname as well. And the placeholder, how about square pants? These labels and input elements will appear on the same line. To separate them and treat them as block level elements, I will add each of these pairs to their own div element. Perhaps I'll add a line break as well. Okay, now with forms, there are built-in buttons too. We will set the input type equal to reset. So if I were to type in some text and click reset, that will reset whatever's within my form. And there is a submit button as well. I will set the type equal to submit. So currently our data doesn't have any place to go to. So if I were to click the submit button, this data is not going to go anywhere. So if I need to send this data to a page, I will list that page within the action attribute of my opening form element. So we'll need the help of a dynamic programming language, PHP for example. We're not going to focus on functionality in this video, but rather the structure of a form. So if I need to send this to a PHP page, I will list that PHP page within the action attribute. There is also an associated method attribute. Two common values are get and post. Get is considered insecure. It's going to append your data to the URL of your web page. So for example, if I set the method to get and type in some information and click submit, it's going to append my data to the end of my URL. So it's going to add a question mark, then all of my data. If you need to submit some secure information like a password, do not use get. I would say that this is useful for things like search boxes, if a user needs to navigate your web page for maybe some sort of keyword. So it's better to use post to submit some secure information. But this isn't going to do anything, obviously, because we do not have a server set up. Now, there is a required Boolean attribute you can add. If somebody needs to submit some information, they are required to fill out any input elements that have this Boolean attribute of required. So if I just attempt to submit this without typing in anything, there is a small pop-up box that says, please fill out this field. All right, I'm gonna go kind of quick through these next input elements just because I think we have the hang of the general context of input elements. So next we have password fields. you set the type equal to password. So if somebody types in some characters, they will be hidden. If you need to set a max size of your password, there is a max length attribute. Let's set this to maybe 12, so we can type in no more than 12 characters for a password. And you can also add that required Boolean attribute too. For an email element, set the type equal to email. In order to submit an email, we need an @ character within our email. Otherwise, we cannot submit this information. And perhaps I'll add a placeholder as well. Placeholder equals spants@gmail.com. So there is our placeholder. For a telephone number, you're going to set the type equal to tel. And I do have a placeholder as well. If you need the user to type in a date, like a birth date, there is a type date, which includes an interactive calendar to select a date. A user can type in a number if you set the type equal to number. Let's say that the user is buying something from a store. There are some arrows where they can increase or decrease the quantity, but we should probably place some limits. They can type in basically whatever number they want. They want -1 billion items. So we can set the min and the max. I'll set the min equal to 0 and the max equal to, what about 99? And you can also set a default value too. I'll set the default value equal to 1. Next, we have radio buttons. With radio buttons, we can only select one radio button from any one group. Perhaps we'll have the user select a title. Are they a Mr., a Miss, or a Doctor? So I'm going to create a pair of labels and input for each option that we have. So we will have a Mr. option, Miss, and PhD. Okay, I will set the input type equal to radio, and then do that with each of these pairs. So we can select more than one because these are all not within the same group. To set them all within the same group, we will all have them have the same matching name. Let's say that the name will be title. So therefore, we can only select one now since they're all within the same group. And that's kind of the idea behind radio buttons. You can only select one. And we will set an associated value of, let's say, Mr. for the first value, Mrs. for the second, and Doctor for the last one. Then I'm just going to precede all of these with a separate label. Let's say title. And I will set the for attribute equal to title. And within each of these radio button labels, when I click on one of these labels, I also want to be able to select one of these radio buttons. So I will set the for attribute equal to a unique ID. So let's say Mr. The ID will be Mr. And repeat the same steps. Okay, so when we click on these labels, we should be able to select our radio buttons. Nice. With drop-down menus, instead of a type, we are going to use a pair of select tags. So there's an opening select tag and a closing select tag, and we list individual options within the select element. We'll give our user 3 options from this drop-down menu. They can pay with a Visa, a MasterCard, or a gift card. And I will give each of these a value. Okay, we now have a payment field, and the user can select an option from this drop-down menu. And the last input type I will explain in this video is the checkbox type. So let's say we have a subscribe button, and you can go ahead and smash that subscribe button. So just set the type equal to checkbox for, well, a checkbox. Well, yeah everybody, that's how to create an HTML form. There's still some more advanced input types we did not cover, but these are the very basics, I would say. If you found this video helpful, please remember to smash that like button, leave a random comment down below, and subscribe if you'd like to become a fellow bro.